Ladies and gentlemen, today marks a historic moment, one that will be remembered for generations to come. The Department of Education, once a towering bureaucracy that dictated policies from afar, no longer exists. This is not merely an administrative change, nor is it a symbolic gesture. It is a fundamental shift, a bold step toward restoring education to the hands of the people it truly belongs to: parents, teachers, local communities, and, most importantly, our students. For too long, a centralized system dictated by distant officials has failed to meet the needs of our children. It has grown into an institution more focused on regulations, standardized tests, and one-size-fits-all policies than on actual learning. Year after year, we have watched as academic performance declined, teachers became entangled in endless red tape, and parents felt powerless over their children's education. A system designed to nurture young minds became a machine of inefficiency, draining resources while delivering underwhelming results. That era is over. With the dissolution of the Department of Education, we are embracing a future in which education is no longer treated as a bureaucratic obligation, but as a personal and local responsibility. Schools will no longer answer to distant policymakers, but to the communities they serve. Teachers will regain the freedom to teach creatively, focusing on what their students need rather than what a federal mandate demands. Parents will once again have a direct say in shaping their children's education, without interference from a system that neither knows nor understands their unique needs. Some will call this a radical change. In truth, it is a return to what has always worked best: education driven by those who are closest to it. States and local governments are now empowered to craft policies that fit their unique populations. Innovation in teaching methods, curriculum design, and school choice will no longer be stifled by bureaucracy. Schools will be free to experiment, compete, and improve, ensuring that no child is held back by a failing system. This is not an end, but a beginning. A new chapter in education is unfolding before us, one that promises greater opportunity, accountability, and excellence. The Department of Education is no more, but the pursuit of knowledge, the commitment to learning, and the future of our children have never been stronger. For years, we have heard the concerns, witnessed the frustrations, and felt the weight of a system that no longer served its purpose. The decision to dissolve the Department of Education was not made lightly, nor was it done without careful consideration of the facts. The truth is that the department had strayed far from its original mission. What was intended to ensure quality education for all became a bureaucratic maze, unaccountable, inefficient, and disconnected from the realities of students, parents, and teachers. It had become an obstacle to progress rather than a catalyst for learning. At its core, education is deeply personal. It is shaped by communities, influenced by culture, and driven by the unique needs of each child. A centralized agency, however well-intentioned, can never account for this diversity. Instead, it imposed a rigid, top-down approach that failed to recognize the strengths and challenges of different regions, different schools, and different students. Local schools were forced to comply with federal mandates that did not reflect their realities. Teachers were buried under regulations that restricted their ability to adapt lessons to their students. Parents found themselves sidelined, their voices drowned out by bureaucrats who claimed to know better. Despite decades of increased funding and ever-expanding oversight, the department failed to deliver the results it promised. Test scores stagnated, graduation rates faltered, and essential skills declined. Schools in struggling communities remained underfunded, while resources were funneled into administrative costs instead of the classroom. Innovation was stifled by red tape, and outdated policies remained in place long after their effectiveness had been questioned. Rather than empowering students to succeed, the system trapped them in cycles of inefficiency and mediocrity. The reality is that no one understands the needs of students better than those closest to them. The decision to eliminate the Department of Education was driven by a belief in the power of local control, the importance of choice, and the necessity of removing bureaucratic barriers to meaningful reform. Now, states, school districts, and families have the freedom to build education systems that truly reflect their needs and aspirations. The burden of a centralized system is gone, and in its place stands a new opportunity. One that puts students first, values the expertise of educators, and trusts parents to shape their children's future. With the Department of Education now behind us, a new era of learning begins, one defined not by federal mandates, but by local innovation, parental involvement, and educational freedom. The dissolution of this massive bureaucracy was never about leaving education without direction. It was about removing the obstacles that prevented it from thriving. Now we have the opportunity to build something better, something that truly serves the needs of students rather than the interests of a distant government agency. In place of a rigid, one-size-fits-all approach, we are embracing a system that allows education to be tailored to the diverse needs of communities. States and local governments will take the lead in crafting policies that reflect their unique populations. This means more flexibility in curriculum design, school choice options that give families control over where and how their children learn, and the ability for schools to innovate without waiting for permission from Washington. No longer will decisions about our children's education be made by bureaucrats who have never set foot in their classrooms. Those who know students best, parents, teachers, and community leaders, will now have the authority to shape their educational journeys. With this transition comes an open door for alternative education models to flourish. Public schools will have the freedom to focus on excellence rather than compliance. Charter schools, homeschooling, private institutions, and vocational programs will no longer be hindered by outdated policies that restricted their growth. Schools can now adopt modern, technology-driven solutions to prepare students for the future instead of being locked into a curriculum that fails to evolve. Critics have long argued that a centralized education system is necessary to ensure quality and accountability, but time and again it has proven that bureaucracy is the greatest barrier to both. True accountability comes when families have the power to choose, when schools must compete to provide the best education, and when teachers are given the flexibility to teach rather than follow rigid directives. This shift does not mean abandoning education. It means rebuilding it in a way that prioritizes students over systems, results over regulations, and success over standardization. This is a turning point not just in policy, but in the very philosophy of education. The burden of federal control is gone, and in its place stands an opportunity for real learning, real progress, and real success. The future of education is now in the hands of those who care about it most. With the Department of Education no longer standing between schools and the students they serve, we can finally focus on what truly matters, giving every child the best possible education. This transition will bring profound changes for teachers, students, and parents. Changes that restore autonomy, encourage creativity, and remove the bureaucratic burdens that have long hindered meaningful progress. For teachers, this marks the end of an era where they were forced to teach to a test rather than to the needs of their students. No longer will they be bound by rigid federal guidelines that dictate how they should educate, leaving little room for adaptation, innovation, or personal connection. Teachers will once again have the freedom to focus on real learning, tailoring their methods to suit their students rather than complying with arbitrary national standards. This shift will allow educators to reignite their passion for teaching, unshackled from the endless paperwork and compliance measures that drain their time and energy. Students, too, will feel the impact of this change in a profound way. Without a one-size-fits-all curriculum imposed from above, they will have greater opportunities to pursue personalized and meaningful education paths. Schools will be empowered to develop programs that cater to different learning styles, interests, and career goals. Vocational training, apprenticeships, and specialized education programs will thrive, offering alternatives to the traditional classroom model that too often left students disengaged or unprepared for the real world. Whether a student dreams of becoming an engineer, an artist, an entrepreneur, or a skilled tradesperson, they will have access to the tools and resources that best fit their aspirations. For parents, this is a long overdue shift that puts them back in control of their children's education. No longer will they be forced to accept decisions made by officials who have never met their child or stepped into their local schools. They will have a greater voice in school policies, curriculum choices, and educational standards. With increased school choice, parents will be able to select the best educational environment for their children, whether that be a public school, a private institution, a charter school, or homeschooling. The days of feeling powerless in the face of a bloated federal system are over. This transformation is not about abandoning education. It is about making it stronger, more adaptable, and truly centered on the needs of those it serves. By removing bureaucratic obstacles, we are opening the door to a future where every student has the opportunity to succeed. Eliminating the Department of Education is not just a symbolic act. It is a decision that carries real economic and policy benefits for students, teachers, and taxpayers alike. For decades, billions of dollars have been funneled into a centralized system that failed to produce meaningful improvements in academic achievement. Instead of enhancing the quality of education, much of this funding was absorbed by administrative costs, compliance measures, and ineffective programs that serve the bureaucracy more than the students. By shifting control back to the state and local levels, we are not only restoring accountability, but also ensuring that resources go where they are needed most: the classroom. Without the financial burden of a massive federal department dictating policy from Washington, states now have the freedom to allocate funds based on their unique needs. Money that was once lost in bureaucratic overhead can now be directed toward teachers' salaries, classroom supplies, and educational programs that directly benefit students. Schools will no longer be forced to comply with costly federal mandates that often had little relevance to their specific challenges. Instead, local communities will have the flexibility to invest in innovative approaches to education, whether that means expanding STEM programs, improving vocational training, or modernizing outdated school infrastructure. Beyond financial savings, this shift represents a broader change in how we approach education policy. For too long, uniform federal policies have ignored the reality that different states, districts, and communities face different educational challenges. A rural school in Montana does not have the same needs as an urban school in New York City, yet both were expected to adhere to the same set of rules. By eliminating top-down regulations, we open the door for more responsive and effective solutions tailored to specific populations. This new framework also encourages competition and innovation. Schools that are free from federal constraints can experiment with different teaching methods, curriculum designs, and technology-driven solutions. Educational institutions will be incentivized to improve in order to attract and retain students, creating a system that rewards excellence rather than compliance. When schools compete to offer the best education possible, students are the ones who ultimately win. This is more than just a cost-cutting measure. It is a reinvestment in the future of American education. By removing bureaucratic inefficiencies and embracing local control, we are ensuring that resources are used effectively, policies reflect real-world needs, and every child has access to the highest quality education possible. With the Department of Education now a thing of the past, we stand at the threshold of a new and promising era in education. This is not the end of learning, it is the beginning of something better. For too long, we were told that a centralized federal system was the only way to ensure quality education, but reality has shown us otherwise. The best education systems are the ones that adapt, innovate, and respond directly to the needs of students, families, and communities. Now we have the opportunity to create an educational landscape that is flexible, diverse, and truly student-centered. The future of education will be defined by choice, opportunity, and local accountability. No longer will schools be forced to follow rigid, top-down mandates that fail to recognize the unique challenges and strengths of different communities. Instead, states and school districts will be free to design their own educational models, experiment with new teaching methods, and implement policies that reflect the needs of their students. Without federal red tape standing in the way, schools can prioritize what works rather than what is required by bureaucrats who are out of touch with the realities of the classroom. Teachers will benefit from this transformation as well. Freed from the constraints of federal testing mandates and administrative burdens, they will have the flexibility to teach in ways that truly engage and inspire their students. Schools will have the ability to reward great educators, attract top talent, and develop innovative professional development programs that are tailored to their unique needs. For parents and students, the future holds more choices and greater control over their educational journeys. Public, private, charter, homeschool, and vocational education will all be viable options, allowing families to select the path that best suits their children's strengths and aspirations. No longer trapped in a one-size-fits-all system, students will have the freedom to explore their passions, develop real-world skills, and receive an education that prepares them for the opportunities of tomorrow.